My recording is also running.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. It's a surprise.
Most of all to us.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. I'm going to do some social now before we get started.
Yes.
And that's just going to be how it has to be. Great. Fun. All right. 14 viewers found us despite... So we had it all set up, and then the our software and YouTube didn't talk to... They're like, hey, do you want to do a stream? We're like, yeah, we want to join the stream we're already on. And that did not work. I don't know why. I'm very unhappy about it, but we're just going to have to soldier on. It's just how it's going to have to be.
A little less polished than usual. We're a little more off the cuff.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. Okay, well, we'll move on and do it anyway.
Let's get it. We're doing it live.
I mean, we're always doing it live. We're just usually, I don't have to make a new live stream page to do it live. All right, here we go. You recording?
I'm recording.
Okay, great. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Jason.
We are here to talk about Apple financial results. Oh, all the accountants in the back are cheering. Well, they're not cheering. They're tapping their pencils on their desks.
They're working their manual calculators and slide rules. Slide rules? No, I probably don't use a slide rule for accounting.
They got them anyway. They got them just to stunt, just to like show off. Like, look at me. There was a thread on social. I don't know if you saw it. There was the thread where Dr. Drang and other people were showing off their
comparing
slide
rulers. Oof. That's some heady content.
Yeah,
they won't let you do that on X. Let me tell you.
Whew. So Apple did its financial results. Record quarter that they promised 3 months ago happened. It's their biggest quarter numerically. I did get immediately a note from somebody who said, "But what about inflation?" It's like, look. We use the numbers the way they are for lots of reasons, because there's consumer prices, and then there's global prices, and different regions have different inflation. And I am not going down that path, and neither is literally anybody else going down that path. But yes, actually, was Apple's $123.9 billion in Q1 2022. If you had $123.9 in 2022, would it be worth more than the $143.80 today? It would be worth slightly more. So if you want to do that, you can play that game. But I'll tell you,
time machine, it's really useful.
Nobody else plays that game. So we're going to call it a record. They called it a record. It's what it is. It's got a big number. Number go up. But the details, of course, are always the most interesting thing. We don't do this just because we're like, hey, look, big number.
It's no fun. Nobody wants to hear about that.
I mean, they can hear about it, but what would it be? Yep. I'm going to do a dramatic reading of the number now, Dan. You ready? 1, 4, 3, point 8. Yeah.
0.8 what?
143.8 billion dollars. What? That's the Apple revenue. Anyway, let's go to the charts. For those who are watching this video, if you are listening to the podcast, you may go to YouTube and watch this as a video, but we also have a podcast for our members that this is what that is, because we are doubling up this week. It is a really good quarter. It is, I know inflation, blah, 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 blah. It's like $20 billion more than the next highest quarter. It's a huge deal. They did promise it. They did deliver it. Big holiday quarter, of course. Always the biggest, as you can see if you're looking at these charts. Or just look along on sixcolors.com, where I posted all these charts earlier today as we record this Thursday when this came out. It's a big day. Just a big number in a big quarter. And they told us this was coming because they said what the percentage was going to be. We will talk about their forward-looking statements in a moment because those were interesting. Any top-line thoughts here, Dan?
I mean, I think we're done being shocked that a quarter that not only contains the holiday, but of course the bulk of Apple's new iPhone sales is the highest quarter, right? Nothing surprising there. This is business as usual. Every year they release the iPhone, and the iPhone comes out in this quarter, and therefore it is the biggest quarter. It helps, I'm sure, that it is also the holiday season and people buy things for the holidays, but it's the iPhone driving it.
It is the iPhone driving it, although I think the holiday quarter doesn't hurt.
Definitely helps.
Actually, one of the things that will be interesting is if they split the iPhone launch as they're expected to do into 2 this fall and next spring. Does that smooth out the look of the charts a little bit?
And
I don't know.
It may. I mean, every year is a little bit different. I think Tim made that comment in the call that every year's iPhone launch is a little different.
Every iPhone
I
is
love
a
them all
snowflake.
equally, he says. But it will give us a little more visibility into mix that we haven't been able to get as much, because if they split it, you can kind of see more where the customers are going, right? Like, it won't give you a perfect detail, but it'll give you more data points.
Yeah, except I think that the more that the lower end phones are probably less likely to be bought on week 1 or month 1.
True.
Versus
there's no perfect way to compare it without them. They know all the numbers. They just don't want to tell us.
It's like trying to calculate inflation. There's no good way to compare it, so don't do that.
It was a running theme of today's call. Once again, you have a lot of information and you won't give it to us.
And you will, oh man. We'll get into it, but wow.
We'll get into it. But yeah, top line, I mean, number go up, right? Like,
you just got to say it.
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
You got to say it. There's nothing else to take away from it. They're making an absurd amount of money. I mean, by all accounts, we talked about the ho-hum $100 million
we'll look
quarter.
At the profit.
Here we go.
Talk about making
profit.
money.
Yeah.
$42.1 billion in profit. Also a record.
That's an absurd amount of money.
You make more revenue, you make more money. I think that's just how that works. What they're not doing, apparently, is spending, a lot of money like on GPUs like everybody else. So,
Well, we'll get into that too.
Anyway, $42.1 billion in profit. Year-over-year revenue change, you can see it here. They had a very expansionary period in 21. It's been fairly quiet since then. This is among, these last, whatever that is, these last 4 years, this has been their best. It's, it's still nothing like Q4 of 2021 was a 29% growth quarter year over year, right? It's not that, but 16 is the best one that they've had in quite a while.
Yeah, 16. I mean, they had a 10% a couple quarters ago too, right? So things are, they're getting back in towards that double digits. That's not nothing.
Yeah, they were excited on CNBC when these numbers came out. Like, please, put it in the teens, please. Actually, what he said was it's double digits, but we're hoping for more. And I thought, well, I don't think it's going to go up triple digits.
Triple digits, 100% growth.
But
you can always dream, right? Got to reach for the stars.
I watch CNBC for 30 minutes, maybe once every 3 months, to see those guys talking about, like, they're the ones who are totally in the bag for Apple, and they're the ones who are kind of like not. And it's funny.
Did Jim Cramer hit anything with a hammer, or
I didn't see old Jimmy today. Gross margin. This is a new one that is fun to track, and actually it came up. We can talk about it.
It did come up.
48.2% gross margin. Literally, one of the analysts was like, "Wow, man, wow, how you do it?" And Tim was like, "We're just cool like that."
I mean, it's almost half, right, of their revenue is
profit.
That's kind of insane for a company that makes stuff.
Yeah, so their product margin is 40.7%, and their services margin was 76.5%. But you can see they have so much product revenue that it ends up coming out to 48.2 overall. They said this was
40% on products is pretty good.
It's pretty great. It's above the high end of their guidance range. That's part of one of the things they said, that one of the themes was that this was a better quarter even than they anticipated, and they anticipated it being an all-time record. Now, one of the questions is what's going to happen next quarter and going forward in terms of margins. A lot of people are really concerned about margins because RAM prices are going way up.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a lot to say about that. I think what they said was that the next quarter, the margins will be hit a little bit more by RAM, but they were still forecasting between 48 and 49. So they're still keeping it there. And then And then after that, they basically didn't want to comment other than to say that, yeah, there are issues here. So I think they are at least laying some groundwork for the possibility that RAM prices are going to eat into margins or into volume, into ability to fulfill orders, or if they would have to raise prices. But they don't want to talk about any of that.
I think if you want to take away a sort of like key term or something that comes up in like the call, the sort of thematic one, I think this call would be constraint. That came up a lot.
Yeah.
Tim Cook talked about supply-demand balance and being constrained. They talked about a couple products that I think was the AirPods. They said they could have sold more.
Yeah, they said we'll get to that in wearables.
But still, yeah.
Constraint,
and this is what seems to be holding them back right now. Sometimes we hear about like we're selling everything we can make, and I think this is even further than that. It's like we literally cannot make them fast enough.
Yeah, so we'll get into that with the individual products, but that is definitely part of what's going on here, which is interesting to see. Here's my little heartbeat graph where I talk about will one day they make more profit on services in a quarter than product. Not this quarter.
Not today.
Not this quarter. Here's my pie chart. I have one pie chart. Contractually, I'm obligated to place one pie chart. We'll tell you, but it's a huge iPhone quarter. So this is the one where the iPhone dwarfs everything else. 59% of Apple revenue was the iPhone. Services 21%. Everything else is tiny. Wearables, home and accessories 8. Mac and iPad 6. iPhone, again, 59% of the revenue is iPhone.
It's like Pac-Man unhinging his jaw.
Pac-Man is going to swallow a pig whole. And then I've got another little colorful chart that you can see if you would like to see these. It's 5 colors because there's only 5 breakouts. It makes me sad. Where's the 6th breakout, Tim? But you can see, again, iPhone and services take a huge amount of the pie. Let's go to the iPhone. $85.3 billion in iPhone revenue, a huge number. This is it's a staggering number. Tim Cook said it exceeded the quarter and iPhone sales both exceeded our expectations, to say the least. And I love how he tossed this off. iPhone grew 23%. Like, not bragging, but iPhone grew 23%. And when you look at the year-over-year revenue change, you can see, again, because iPhone drives everything, not since 2021 have they had a quarter like this for the iPhone in terms of growth.
It's always interesting to use this as a data point, right? Because we look at the launch when it happens, and we, do our analysis and assessments of like, how does this year's product launch like shape up? Like, what do the models look like? How do they seem? And then we get this, if you want to use the marketing lingo, trailing indicator that lets us know how it actually performed financially. And I think in general, our assessments this year were generally very positive about the 17 line, right? The 17 was a good phone. The Air was kind of cool. The 17 Pro really was pushing the envelope in some ways. It was kind of a bigger departure for design and stuff like that. And I think we see, as in the past, when they like changed, the famous iPhone 6 bump, right? When they change the form factor or the design, they get a bump. And that is very apparent here. I mean, we don't know the breakdown for which phones, how many Airs they sold versus Pros versus iPhone 17s. We don't know that. But like,
Tim will tell you that he loves all his children equally.
Loves them all equally.
I would imagine that the 17 sold well because it's so much more capable than the 16,
Very
and the 17
phone.
Pro sold well. And the Air we know is not a big component of it anyway. But I think that they all did well, and we'll see later with my last slide. But like, there was
where did they do?
There was really good China growth, which does not. I mean, the cliche, if that's what it is, that you make a big design change and you will sell well in China, which just got reinforced. I don't know if that's the reason. I really don't.
Yeah, but
it happened.
It's hard to point at something else, right? That's the challenge.
Yeah. Before I move on, I swiped too soon. I wanted to say, talking about iPhone, I thought this was very interesting. You talked about constraint earlier. What Tim said was, we exited the December quarter with very lean channel inventory due to a staggering, pat himself on the back, level of demand. And based on that, we're in a supply chase mode, which was my favorite mode on Knight Rider. When you go into supply chase mode,
I thought it was some sort of horse event to the Olympics.
Supply chase.
Supply chase, yeah.
To meet the very high levels of customer demand. We are currently constrained, and at this point, it's difficult to predict when supply and demand will balance. Now, this is really interesting. Remember legacy nodes?
I'm so excited.
Forget about legacy nodes, friends. The constraints that we have are driven by the availability of the advanced nodes that our SoCs are produced on. And at this time, we're seeing less flexibility in the supply chains than normal, partly because of our increased demand that I just spoke about. So here's what this means. They are specifically, and he said later, they are talking about 3 nanometer TSMC systems on a chip, Apple Silicon chips. They have 23% iPhone increase in sales is more than they anticipated. And while they can make more, they can't make that many more because they've kind of bought out this fab for TSMC, and it's a I was going to say cutting edge, advanced node, and so they can't like just say make more burgers, right? Like it's a challenge because this is one of their advanced nodes, and it's a cutting edge chip design coming out of TSMC. So so it's interesting because what they're saying is, even if we anticipated improved demand, we didn't anticipate this much, and we can't. There's not a box full of 3 nanometer chips in
hanging
the corner.
Out.
Yeah.
No, it is the advanced node thing. I laugh because it is watching the shift in the market, right? Like going from there's all these other older chips, but everybody wants them, to all of a sudden, no, what everybody wants is the cutting edge stuff, the stuff that's in demand, and for reasons that we all know. And
this may not be true, but I mean, you do get the sense, the narrative about TSMC now, Apple not being TSMC's biggest customer anymore because of all of the GPU stuff that everybody wants to build, all the AI processing that TSMC is building chips for. That I'm not sure whether it would have made any difference, but it's interesting that Apple is saying basically like we can't get enough of the chips from our partner. But I think maybe it's literally like this is a brand new process that came on, brand new setup, and they can't they anticipated a little more demand, but they have not reached it. And then when somebody said, and this is a classic Tim Cook thing, they say, well, when do you think it's going to come into balance? And he'll say, until we know what the demand is, we can't tell you. And like we sell them as fast as we make them, essentially. And that means we don't know when we've made too many. And so we can't actually estimate. That's a really interesting position to be in.
It is also
most profitable product.
They talked at one point about some of the deals they were making. I mean, Tim wanted to hype up American manufacturing, but obviously we saw that they were doing a deal with Intel for some processor stuff. And most of that is not the advanced nodes, but surely they would like to help bulk up the capability of some of those other partners so as not to be entirely dependent on one big, producer that is in heavy demand. So
right, although it might not help
long-term.
It might not help because it's the advanced nodes, right? But
but if you can help increase their business and get them better to a point where maybe they're being a little bit more competitive, that's a good field for Apple to have. So if they're looking 10, 20 years out, I think they'd like to be able to have their options open as opposed to being dependent on TSMC for all this stuff. But it is really hard to do, and they may not be able to do it.
We now move on from advanced nodes to the proverbial tough compare, which is the Mac, which was down year over year, down sequentially, 8.4 billion. Again, the Mac business is still pretty good. They reached an all-time high, they said, in installed base, and the classic nearly half the people who bought a Mac were new to the product. I do get the sense that in China, especially in some of these other less mature markets, that Apple uses the iPhone like they did here back in the day as a gateway to these other products. And so who knows what's going on there. But they said that this is a tough compare because all they really had was that new M5 at the base of the MacBook Pro, which is not that interesting. I will say one of the things that I thought was interesting is in a very creative attempt to get Apple to reveal future product announcements.
I really enjoyed this.
This was good, like, right?
It was smart. As soon as he said it, I was like, oh, that is the right way to ask that question.
So the analyst was, hey, I know it was a tough compare this year. I'm sorry, my condolences, but can you tell me why you didn't say it was a tough compare for the Mac this coming quarter? And what Kevin Parrick, the CFO, said was, there's nothing that rises to that kind of color that we'd outline in the outlook, which to me is like, what does that mean, Kevin? Does that mean that everything's just fine and like last year at this time wasn't that great, so this year at this time is not going to be that great? Or is that code for, besides which in a couple weeks we're going to ship new MacBook Pros and we're going to sell a lot of them and it's not going to be a tough compare? And so the question was well crafted. He's not going to answer that question, but it is not a non-answer to say, if we had told you it was going to, if we thought it was going to be a particularly tough compare next time, Q2, we would have said, and we didn't. So
it's a bit of a canary, right? It's like, well, they didn't say it would be a tough compare, which could mean,
you be the judge. You be the judge. So somebody could do the math and look about what were the new things. I think the MacBook Air was new.
Yeah,
Q2
there were a few
last
things
year,
last spring, as there usually are, but it's often a kind of a hodgepodge.
Yeah,
so.
and Q2 bleeding into Q3 sometimes. Anyway, I admire your skills, analyst, for trying. I should give that analyst credit, but I didn't actually call up who they were. That was a very impressive. Let me see here. That kind of color is what he said. Aaron Rakers. Good job. Also, that was a question that began with him saying, I'm going to not talk about memory, which was nice. Nice little... That was the trend, was people wanted to talk about memory and Google.
People want to talk about memory, RAM, Google, AI.
Yeah, so the Mac revenue change. Mac had a very nice 8 consecutive quarters of increase year over year, but the tough compare comes for us all in the end.
It does. Well, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of potential upside there. I was really interested in the...
and Dan, this year's tough compare is next year's easy compare.
That's right. You always got to look forward. Skate to where the compare is going. I think one of the other interesting, this is just a little ancillary detail about the Mac, but it's also plays into your comment about China. You mentioned at one point the MacBook Air being the best-selling laptop, I think, in China, and then the Mac Mini being the best-selling desktop in China. I think that was towards the end at one point. Just to say that, I think that's kind of fascinating. So iPad was the top tablet model in urban China. And according to Counterpoint, the MacBook Air was the top-selling laptop model, and the Mac Mini was the top-selling desktop model in the December quarter. So, again, your halo effect point, right? Like, the Mac is still helped by that, and perhaps that offset what might have been even more dire quarter for the Mac. But I wouldn't count it out yet. I feel like, if there's a big announcement in the next couple months and we know they have some stuff up their sleeves, that number is going to come bouncing back. And
more to that, just not thinking quarter by quarter, a down quarter for the Mac on the tough compare is just not a big deal. The Mac is doing fine.
It's pretty stable.
Yeah. iPad did okay. Up sequentially and by a lot, and up year over year from a pretty decent holiday quarter, back up toward 9. Not quite 8.6. 9.4 was the all-time high in this era, at least.
But it's almost as good as that, right?
Good.
Like, it's pretty close, so nothing to sneeze at.
It's pretty good. And
I didn't even feel like it was a big iPad quarter, but
no, I mean they said that the M5 iPad Pro helped, and then that new base iPad with a processor of some
the one that they mentioned. I often zone out a bit when Tim likes to talk about, or is it might be Kevin talking about all the places where the enterprise deploys various products. But they mentioned deploying, was it like AstraZeneca or somebody? It was a drug company deploying M5 iPad Pros to their reps.
5,000 M5 powered iPad Pros to its pharmaceutical sales team.
Using AI. And they're like, and I just had them, I'm like, what are they using it for? I don't know. I thought it was funny. I mean, I guess they're probably making, pitch decks or whatever, or sales presentation. I don't know what those people do.
Or are they recording
I don't know, but I'm fascinated by that, especially because they mentioned like including Apple Intelligence. It's like, what are they doing? Writing tools? We're doing a lot of writing tools. I don't know, but I find it funny.
They said the A18 or the A16 iPad and the M5 iPad Pro both helped. And as we know from that year where they didn't release an iPad, releasing iPads is good because people will buy them then, and they won't buy them when they're old. So. It's been a good, 7 quarters now for the iPad when they kind of started releasing iPads again.
Sure.
So,
yeah. It's a solid business to be
again, very solid business. The services revenue, it hit 30 billion for the first time.
Yeah.
It is, talk about your numbers that just go up. It has been a long time since there wasn't even a sequential increase. This is a kind of business that just keeps going up. And if I switch over to our revenue change chart, you can see basically it goes up.
Teens, percentage.
It's going up in the teens every single quarter.
Yeah, it's it's ticking, right? It ticks along. It ticks up a little bit every time. They talked about their 2.5 billion devices installed base. And said essentially like this is a great opportunity for us to sell more services. There was an interesting question towards the end where somebody using some external statistics asked about a drop in App Store revenue, which I thought was fascinating because they were like, it's something like 7. It was like, these guys said you're down 7%. And they said, well, we set an all-time record for the quarter for the App Store, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't mean anything because we don't know what those details are. But I did think it was interesting that there's maybe some perception of softness in the App Store. Certainly, again, in our little corner of the woods, there's dissatisfaction with it, but it's always hard to see how that translates to the larger market because there's so many more people. So I don't know. That just I kind of flagged that and thought to myself, that's interesting. I'm kind of curious to see if that goes anywhere.
I will.
They also talked about maps and selling ads in a bunch of places as a other potential driver of revenue to services. Yeah.
The question asked about that, and then they didn't really talk about it. But I will say that Wamsi Mohan asked that question from Bank of America. New operator on the call this quarter who doesn't know how to pronounce anybody's names, and I thought they should just have one of us be the operator. I know all those names now. I know how to spell them. Wamsi Mohan's question was about a third-party data that showed a deceleration in growth. I just want to make that clear.
Fair.
It's the most Wall Street concern ever. Your growth continues, but not as fast. It is accelerating by less. And okay, I get it.
I have that problem.
I get why. I just think it's very funny. It's like, oh, your growth may be decelerating, except they don't report that. So I don't know.
You got to get that wedge where you can.
Yeah. They said they set a record this summer. Anyway, it's great. Super Denny Cart in the YouTube chat said, I did my part and got an M5 iPad. So did I. So I'm patting myself on the back here. I contributed. I helped.
Consumers of the world unite.
I contributed a very small amount to the record billions and billions made by Apple, but I did contribute. Wearables, home, and accessories. This is something you alluded to earlier. Really interesting. So, always it's a seasonal business. Always does well in the holidays. It did 11.5 billion, but if you look at their holiday number, it just keeps going down. And if you look at the year-over-year chart, you can see that wearables, home, and accessories has basically been recessing for 3 or 4 years. Down 2% year over year, which is not terrible, but keep in mind that, that year was down 2% from the previous year, which was Q1, which was down 3% from the previous year, which was down 8% from the previous year. So it has been deflating. The air is coming out of this balloon a little bit. I think that's one reason they are rumored to be doing a bunch of home initiatives. I think that finally somebody looked at this and said, we need to make more of an effort in this category. However, that all said, according to Tim and Kevin, they were supply constrained on AirPods Pro 3, and if they had been able to fulfill all of the purchases of AirPods Pro 3, they would have grown. So What do I know?
Well, it's interesting because it points to where the drivers are, right? I mean, I think that the two biggest drivers in this category are AirPods and the Apple Watch, obviously.
For sure.
For sure. By a lot.
Somebody
right? Like,
asked me about the M5 Vision Pro, and I'm like, all 800 that were sold? I mean...
Calling it wearables, home, and accessory is just a nicer way of saying other.
Which is what it used to be called.
It used to be called that. And home is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
AirTags are in here, too. So get ready for next quarter. Woo!
HomePod.
All those $99 AirTags.
The only home products they sell are the HomePod, unless you count the Apple TV.
Apple TV.
I guess
it's in
is
here.
A home product. Sure. I know it's in here, but is it a home product or an accessory? I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe it's a wearable.
It's a home product.
Be a wearable.
I don't wear my Apple TV, Dan. I refuse. It's too big. Too bulky.
Anyways, it's interesting because they also did talk about that, I think saying with the Apple Watch too, they pull out their 50% of the people who bought one were new to the Apple Watch.
Yeah.
At least in some of the markets. I don't remember if they said the US or not, but
yeah, but in China for sure.
There's still a lot of room for growth, right? Because it doesn't do the business that iPhones do. So there's always going to be more people because you need an iPhone to use an Apple Watch. There's always going to be more iPhone customers than Apple Watch customers, and that's upside for you because it means there's always more people to sell to.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah. The way it works is there are a lot of iPhones out there, and then you sell services to those people, and you sell Macs to those people, and you sell iPads to those people, and you sell watches to those people, and you sell AirPods to those people. And that's kind of the whole business right now.
You're going to sell AI features to those people.
I'm going to go back to the wackos on CNBC that I see every 3 months. And they're different, but I consider them all part of the hive mind. Anyway, one of the things that one of them said that I thought was like good analysis in that I agreed with it is he said, the way to view services revenue and iPhone revenue, it's like a big ball. No, that's not what he said. He was just saying like the truth is that you can keep selling more services and that services is an iPhone business. And he's right. I mean, that is actually what like services is not. We made this point last time. Services is not its own thing. Services reflects on the rest of the business, especially the iPhone business. And that because Apple has built this holistic business around the iPhone, what you get is a business that, in many financial analysts' opinion, is more stable than what a lot of other tech companies are going through. Because I think what he said was, in 5 years, we're all still going to be buying iPhones.
Yeah.
And he's right. And his point is we may be doing AI things on them, and we may be doing AI things on them from Apple or from somebody else. But Apple is still almost certainly going to be selling you a product in 5 years.
Right.
And a lot of these other companies is like, I don't know, because they're putting enormous amounts of money into AI stuff that may or may not hit. And I really agree with that the advantage Apple has in this circumstance, even if they kind of totally blow it with AI, which they kind of totally have up to now, is I just don't believe that everybody in the near term is going to be like, oh, I don't buy phones anymore. I just AI. It has to run on a platform, and Apple has a very powerful platform, even if it has, to make a deal with Google, et cetera, et cetera. So interesting that it all just kind of like starts up at the top and then everything kind of trickles down from there.
Yep. Trickle down economics, finally.
Finally, it works. Where's the voodoo? When did the voodoo economics come in?
Something.
That's George Bush. Regional revenue chart just to show where Apple makes its revenue. It's in the Americas, followed by the EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa, India. Some positive things about India. Again, they talk about growth there, and then somebody asked them about growth, and Tim Cook points out that their market share is so low that there's plenty of room to grow. China uptick, which I'm going to show again in a minute, and then down below, rest of Asia Pacific and Japan. So, Apple still makes a lot of its money in America. And
once again, they're really determined to keep you from having 6 different colors you can use here. I just noticed.
They try.
They work hard.
But big growth in China. I mean, Tim Cook was beside himself. He was so happy about...
He loves China growth.
Big growth in China. It was terrific. great quarter in China. We could not be more happy with it, he said. So, good job. And then this is why, is this last chart, which is year over year China revenue change. And you can see that they have not had a quarter like this since Q1 of 22, so 4 years ago. They have been in the doldrums. So to get a 38% growth quarter year over year in China, it is big, and I think it does feed the narrative that the solution to China, at least in part, is make an interesting new iPhone so that the Chinese buyers will want it, which they did. So good. Thanks, Tim. Good lesson. So those are the charts. The other big topic was Google. Everybody wanted to know what the deal is with Apple's deal with Google. And I thought it was very funny that they tried many times, which the analysts do, and then they don't answer. They said, that they're working on them and that they still like their hybrid strategy of having on device and then things in private cloud. And they said Google is going to help with personalized Siri. They haven't really said much more than that. I mean, the fact that they mentioned Google in the opening statement, I think, is impressive because they haven't posted anything on their website about it, even though Google did. I have some choice quotes here. When asked by Ben Reitzes of Melius about the details of their arrangement with Google, Tim Cook said, in terms of the arrangement with Google, we're not releasing the details of that. To which Ben Reitzes said, bummer. Okay, I tried. At which point there was laughter heard on the phone as you heard Tim Cook laugh and say, you did. And Ben Reitzes says, yeah, you knew it would be me. And then there was more laughter from Tim Cook. I thought that was a hilarious moment because it is saying what we're all thinking, which is, nice try. And then later, when asked again by another analyst about it, Kevin Parrick said, as Tim outlined, we aren't going to provide any details on our arrangement and collaboration with Google, other than, I will say, Tim's advice that we should think of it as a collaboration.
Ooh, it's a collab. It is jam sesh.
Actually, I mean, I think it's telling that they're settling on that word because that's what they want people to view this as. It's like Google is providing this engine and Apple is providing this, to Apple's specifications to a certain degree, and Apple is providing whatever it's doing like above it in its UI and connecting it to its stuff. And I think a lot of us anticipate, connecting it to app intents. So connecting it to its apps and its APIs and things on these devices that are kind of uniquely iOS, but with Google's thing underneath it. So it's in Apple's best interest to communicate this as a collaboration because Apple doesn't want to be seen as Google is coming in to save Apple's bacon, which it sort of is, but it's also not going to be like Apple releases Gemini on iOS and says we're done. Like what we're going to get is not Gemini. We're going to get an Apple product with Apple integration that's using Gemini's engine to do the work, which is a collaboration. So I can see why they might be so proud that they want to insist that you think of it as a collab and not as Google coming in to save the day.
Yeah, and a collaboration can mean a lot of different things, right? It's like, well, 10% of that is Apple and 90% of it's Google, or 50% of it's Apple and 50% of it's Google. Like, what parts are being used by whom? I mean, Tim also said, it will obviously independently continue to do some of our own stuff.
Yes.
It's very vague, but sure. I mean, this is, after or before, I guess it was before this today, but they announced they bought another firm that does, machine learning AI stuff today.
Yeah. For audio and stuff like that. And they've got a bunch of stuff. A lot of their imaging is using ML. I think
there's a ton of machine learning stuff they've done for ages, right? Like what they're doing is supplementing with the areas where their research and development has fallen short.
They don't have a good chatbot model.
They don't have a good chatbot model because they poo-pooed it by all accounts.
A general purpose chatbot model that has some benefits that they want to use for various things, but they will also still do other things. I think that's right. I think that's what the idea is. In terms of, is it 90%? Is it 50%? I mean, in my opinion, it entirely depends on Apple's execution, right? I think ideally, and I felt this way about Apple Intelligence too, is like leaving aside to Apple's foundation models, which turned out to be so questionable that they're using Google's instead. Really, the secret sauce for Apple has always been, how do you make that into a product? Because right now, so many AI products are literally a box you type in or a thing you talk to. And I think where Apple adds benefit is it's infrastructure stuff on its platforms. So that's App Intense and stuff like that. And it's providing UI that's nice, that is like a nice interface to do, whether it's things you're tapping on or whether it's how the results come back in a way that makes sense to you and is not just text in a box. Like, if they do a bunch of that really well, and it's this whole experience where they're using APIs and the interface looks nice and regular people want to use it, and you might not even think that you're using AI even though you are, because it's not like a chatbot, then it's 50, 60, 70% Apple.
Right.
If most of it is just kind of a chatbot experience with Apple flavor, then it's 10%.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we don't know a lot about this other than they said it's still coming this year. But, I thought it was also interesting. They asked at some point, enjoy capitalism, but like, you're selling you've got AI. How are you going to make money off all this AI? Where do you see the advantages to you? Like, where's the revenue stream? Basically, I think they said specifically monetization.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of interesting because Tim's response to that was, well, let me just say we're bringing intelligence to more of what people love, and we're integrating it across the operating system in a personal and private way. And I think that by doing so, it creates great value, and that opens up a range of opportunities across our products and services. I mean, okay, there's not much there to pick into, but it's very emblematic of their philosophy about it, which is, we're going to sprinkle this throughout the operating system. We think it makes the experience better, and by making the experience better, our customers are happier and will buy more stuff from
us. The answer, that's what it is. That is a very nice bit of analysis, because my response was going to be, how do you monetize better AI on your devices? And the answer is sell more iPhones. Have you heard of the iPhone?
Yeah. Or that's
the clarity that Apple's business model brings. I mean, services changes it a little bit, but like the clarity of what we do is we make a phone with a lot of good features on it, and it's a nice phone, and then people pay $1,000 for a phone, and we make 50% margins on the phone.
Right. It will be interesting to see how that plays into, we just talked about this week's release of the Creators Studio, which had essentially you pay for that to get access to some of the AI features, because the AI features are powered by external partners. Might that change? May they roll that back if it's not something that's dependent on outside partners?
I mean, cloud servers still cost money.
That is monetization, though. It does cost money.
Yeah, cloud servers cost money. I don't love what they're doing there, but I at least can accept that if you've got a bunch of features that are driven by going to a server that costs a lot of money to run, or do you improve your foundation models and on-device models to the point where it can handle some of these things, right? Maybe,
there's a lot of questions about that.
Maybe. The problem with on-device models is just that
they're not as good.
They're not as good, and they're often slow, so it would be faster to send your data off to a server farm somewhere and have it be processed and have it sent back to you than it would be to just run it on your device.
Our network speeds have gotten faster than our processors.
Yeah, it's just heavy stuff. So that's
the quarter.
That's the quarter. So, a record that we expected forecast. Oh, I wanted to mention their forecast. So they forecast. I did the math. I was told there would be no math.
There would be no math. Yes.
No, but there's always math on this because it's all these numbers. So, by the way, before we get there, just one point, I'm gonna make this joke in the thing I'm gonna write, but like, all-time record for operating cash flow, coming in at $53.9 billion. Let's hear it for the cash flow. Woo! Nobody cares. Accounting nerds care. Great. There's a lot of cash flow. Watch the cash flowing. No, if you take their estimate about what they're going to do next quarter, which is revenue to grow by 13 to 16% year over year, that means they are going to generate in a fiscal second quarter between $107 and $110 billion, which is a non-first quarter record for Apple by a lot. A lot. To have a $107+ billion quarter that's not a holiday quarter is bananas. So that is what they're forecasting.
We talked a few quarters ago about the run-of-the-mill 100 billion plus quarter.
Yeah,
and
just a boring quarter.
And I believe we had $100 billion quarter before the holiday quarter.
Yeah,
as
Q4
well.
was $100 billion.
Yeah, so we may be at the new plateau where it's $100 billion. Yeah, they may cross $100 billion every quarter. We don't know.
We can't tell the future, but I will say if Apple's business continues to kind of bubble along like it's been and doesn't have a bad time, it feels like we maybe have passed the point where there's ever a quarter under 100 billion.
Yeah.
If Q4 was 102.5 and Q2 is going to be 109, let's say 108, 110. Is it going back down in Q3? I don't think so.
Sorry, I had a serious Back to the Future moment there, right, where you go back in time and tell somebody in the 1990s, "Don't worry, in a few decades, your company, Apple, about to die, will be making $100 billion a quarter." Man. And they'll say, "Oh, who's the president in 2025?" It's like, Donald Trump,
we're not talking
real
about
estate guy.
Yeah. Wow, he must be doing a great job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that reminded me, actually. One last note I wanted to mention. A thing that did not get mentioned. It was mentioned once, but it was very briefly mentioned. Tariffs.
Yeah, there was very much
almost not mentioned.
Yeah, well, so somebody asked about it, and they're like,
"We're not ask very late."
We're not going to talk about it.
That. Yeah, I thought that was interesting because there was a point, and this sort of zoom out a little bit economically, like there was a point where a lot of companies were like sort of calling out like, well, the tariffs are affecting it and this is how we're dealing with it, or this is how much more we're paying for things.
They said they paid what they thought they would, which was like $1.6 billion as forecast, but they didn't talk about what they're going to do next. 1.4 billion for the December quarter, and we laid it roughly at that range. Also, though, I will say when they talked about their forecast, they said this assumes no changes to the global macroeconomic climate or tariffs, right? Like, and we all know what that is like, but there could be more at any point, and you don't even know.
They struck a very, unsurprisingly, probably a non-antagonistic stance on it.
Very much unsurprisingly at this point. It's clear what their strategy... Look, without getting into the whole rigmarole, I went into it in detail on
maybe tune into the next part of this the podcast if you're listening on the podcast.
But I will say this. It's very clear that their strategy is don't make waves with the U.S. government and show up to every event you're invited to, because they know that if they get on the bad side of the people who are running the government, they could cost them billions and billions and billions of dollars. And so they've just decided not to do that. And we can all judge how we feel about that, but I think they're counting their money, and that's why.
Tim Cook is crying into $143 billion bills.
I don't think he can cry anymore.
No.
I have one last stat before we wrap here, Dan.
Yes.
Apple's revenue for the iPhone this quarter was about the size of Apple's total revenue in quarter 3 of 2024. Not that long ago.
I thought you were I definitely thought that was going to be farther.
6 quarters ago.
Yeah, that's
how much revenue
that's
the
a year
iPhone
I can actually remember.
Was 6 quarters ago.
Wow.
You had a kid back then.
I still did. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That kid was
not that long
not
ago.
even that young.
No. So just, I mean, and it's not fair because it's holiday quarter and all that, but just to the size of the iPhone revenue is, this goes back to our boring $100 billion quarters. It's kind of like that too, which is the iPhone is the size of Apple's business a few years ago, right? Like not even that many. Even if you went back to a holiday quarter, you probably would only have to go back 4 or 5 years.
I was going to call out to Super Denny Card in the chat, and YouTube said, new rule of acquisition number 286. If you finally make a good color, they'll buy even more of it. So you want to pin on something? Orange phones, man. Who doesn't love an orange phone?
From now on, this is the orange quarter. The orange revolution starts here.
Got an orange phone right here. It worked on me.
Yeah, we're using our video capabilities to show off that we are both podcasting with orange iPhones. It totally worked. All right, that is a wrap on the chart wrap. Thank you to those who found us despite our technical difficulties earlier. And we're done. Until next time. Bye, Dan.
Bye, Jason.